Hello everyone, this is Nachirutimana Peter. If you did not subscribe, subscribe. You need more stories, subscribe. Thank you so much. Today I have an interesting story. It is a novel that was written by Elechi Amadi. It is The Concubine. I'm going to summarize it chapter by chapter. Let us go. Chapter 1. Emenik is on his way to tap his wine through the forest. He meets Madume and very soon discovers Madume's mission. He had threatened to beat Emenik because of a quarrel they had over a piece of land, and he had come to fulfill his promise. Madume is considered as a dishonest land grabber by Emenik, and Madume threatens to beat him. They challenge each other and finally get into a serious fight. Although Emenik seems to manage the fight at first and overpower Madume, later Madume beats Emenik seriously to the point that he thought he had killed him, thus he ran away. Madume finally gains strength and walks home. His wife IHUOMA wonders whether he fought against the leopard. Madume is happy to hear that at least Emenik managed to make it to home because of the fear of the cost of the rites of purification. Chapter 2. Madume is now in his early 30s and had not achieved anything in life. His heart, while small, had very small yam farm and even never cared for having more houses only because he feared thatching them in rain season. Woru, his wife, bore him 4 children, girls, but he was not happy as the daughters could neither bear his name nor inherit his properties when he died. He thinks of marrying another wife when his daughters got married. He hates Emenik just because he is cited by old men as an ideal young man and because he married IHUOMA, the most desirable girl in Omigwe village. Emenik's condition begins to get serious thereafter the fight between him and Madume, but is not ready to admit it. Anyika, the medicine man who is believed to be a mediator between the villagers and the spirit world, comes to see him. As usual, he uses tricks to get to Manila. He mutters some words addressing their gods to accept his request. He tells them what things to collect for the sacrifice the next day and leaves. Wakiri comes to visit Emenik and encourages him to take it easy. Nokekoro, the priest of Amadioha, the god of thunder, also has come to visit him. He is believed to be the chief rainmaker and is feared by other rainmakers, and they dare not work in opposition to him. He reassures the couple that at least there is a hope. If they make sacrifice, he might be healed. Chapter 3. Emenik gradually recovers and his family is now happy over his recovery. They are in the reception hall of the compound roasting and eating maize. Nenda, a neighbor's wife, comes to ask IHUOMA to braid her hair, and IHUOMA asks for the same. IHUOMA asks for the mirror to see how beautiful she is. We are told that she is beautiful, but that did not make her arrogant. She was sympathetic, gentle, and reserved. She did not like quarrels with other women, to the point that she found herself settling quarrels and offering advice to older women. She hears the sound of Oduma dance from Omigwe village and starts dancing. Katunona and Azubike children joined in. Emenik finds them dancing and rewards his wife by giving her a manira. Chapter 4. We are told that Omokachi is a small village comprising 11 family groups. In the east, there is a village called Arichi. In the west, there is Omigwe, which was founded by Igwe. Igwe was banished from Omokachi because he failed to collect the things the medicine man ordered to be collected for the sacrifice. Later, he became successful. It takes only brave men to leave Omokachi to Arichi because of the dangers on the forestry way. Emenik was always sent for those errands. Chioru was another nearby village to Mukachi. People from both villages met most often to worship and give sacrifices jointly to their powerful god who lived in Mini Weku stream. People worship Ojuku, the god that controls smallpox, a dreadful disease. They dared not call it by name and addressed it as the good thing. It was believed that the gods visited people at night in forms of human beings and asked for something like vegetables, trifle, etc. And if denied, one caught the disease. It is customary to offer sacrifice to Amadioha after an illness, so Emenike was also prepared to go and offer sacrifice to Amadioha. On the way, they talk about the fight between Emenike and Madume until they reach the sacred woods of Amadioha. Mokekoro comes out of the shrine and Emenike notes that old men averted their faces when he glanced toward their direction. He made a mistake and gazed at the priest. That action frustrates him a lot till he feels like dozing. Mokekoro makes a big fire and boils the cocks. Before eating the meat, he cuts off one wing of a chicken and throws it to the high side of the temple. A big snake comes and eats the meat, then the men eat the rest. Chapter 5. Emenike is dead, and IHUOMA is in great sorrow. She wishes for her husband to emerge from somewhere, but the grave was still holding him securely. Sometimes she would call him loudly, expecting to turn up. Woru, Madume's wife, comes to sympathize with her. Woru finds it difficult to console her because although Emenike died of locked chest, people attributed his death to the recent fight with Madume, her husband. As Woru tried to comfort her, she finds herself reminding IHUOMA of her dead husband, and IHUOMA begins to weep all over again. Woru leaves her and goes home. At the same time, IHUOMA's mother Okachi comes in and wonders what Woru was doing there. She curses Woru because she believes she had come to mock her daughter and not to sympathize with her. She says that Emenike will revenge against his murderers from the spirit world. She wishes she had stopped the marriage between Emenike and her daughter, since her daughter has become a widow prematurely. Ikweme also comes to visit the bereaved family and sympathize with them. He encourages IHUOMA to stop crying since it was useless by then. He diverts the conversation and they start talking about wrestling instead. They point out that the wrestlers use charms to win their contests. Chapter 6. Ikweme goes back home but with the picture of IHUOMA in his mind. On one hand, he shows admiration towards her. On the other hand, he feels sympathetic to her. He meets Wakiri and the two plan to compose a song in honor of Emenike. Ikweme goes home, takes a shower and starts enjoying his yam fufu when Wakiri comes. After supper, the two friends set about their composition. After finishing their tune, Wakiri takes it to Adiere to practice beating it. 1 month after Emenike's death, people of the village gather for a dance at the village arena. A hot-tempered drummer prepares the drums, and finally Adiere, the chief beater, arrives. Wakiri and Ikweme also come while singing. The dance starts seriously, and young men and women join in. When the darkness fell, women and young children went to bed. The rest danced all the night. Emenike's song is sung with a mixture of happiness and unavoidable melancholy. The first stanza was, Do you know that Emenike is dead? Hey, hey, hey. We fear the big wide world. Hey, hey, hey. Do not plan for tomorrow. Hey, hey, hey. IHUOMA had not gone to dance. Instead, she lay tossing on her bed. Nevertheless, she could still hear the sound of the song in honor of her husband. She cried aloud, and her son Nona woke up and cried with her. She had shaved her hair according to the tradition. She dreams of her husband waking into the reception hall and asks her for food. She hurries to the kitchen to prepare the food only to come back and find there is no one in the reception hall. She cries in the dream, and when she wakes up, she finds her eyes wet with tears. Chapter 7. 1 year after Emenic's death, life had come back to normal. IHUOMA kept on collecting the wood in preparation for the second burial rite, which was to take place after the New Yams festival. Nadi, IHUOMA's brother-in-law, on his side kept on storing dried meat. IHUOMA is worried that the mourners may demand her beloved she-goat to be slaughtered. Nadi clears her worries by telling her that he will be in charge of everything. They prepare the booth for the mourners. According to the tradition, the old women had to arrive first, followed by Emenic's age group, and lastly old men. Ekweme and Wakil also come to help with the preparations. All the women arrive with small bags which will later be used to carry dried goat meat for their children and grandchildren. They were welcomed by dried meat, palm oil, sauce, and pepper. After eating the midday meal, Emenic's age group also arrive in war dress and sharp knives while singing Omogu Odulawe Aye, Omogu Odulawe Aye. They come with machetes, dancing, jumping, cutting, and slashing. A lot of plantain trees are cut down. The whole atmosphere changed dramatically. Some of the men wept, and others gnashed their teeth. Others howled wildly. All this was a dance of passion, anger, and protest against the god of death that took their departed comrade. Since Emenic had been a wrestler, they staged a mock wrestling match in his honor. In the morning, the older men arrive and are amazed at the distraction made by the young men. They are served, and as they eat, Homer moves around making sure that they don't lack anything. They feel pity for her to carry that responsibility at her age. After 8 days of the ceremony, Homer is expected to cast out her sackcloth and dress properly. Chapter 8. IHUOMA has resumed her responsibilities of taking care of the children and looking after the farm her husband left her. She coped with life again, and her health improved, bringing back her beauty. Young men and older gazed at her irresistibly. On some AK-laced days, she goes to Omigwe to visit her father Ogbuji, a very handsome man, received them warmly. IHUOMA goes straight to the kitchen to greet her mother and helps her with the cooking. Then Okachi tells IHUOMA that she needs a man to look after her. She's not interested in that subject, and she goes to greet the neighbors. When she comes back, they sit together and eat while Ogbuji makes sure that Noma observes the eating etiquette. They eat while cracking jokes. After the meal, Ogbuji goes to tap palm wine and Okachi resumes her topic. IHUOMA insists that she doesn't need any man at the present, since her brother-in-law Nadi is taking care of her. Okachi suggests Ekweme because he is a well-behaved young man, but she refuses. When her mother keeps on pressing, she loses her temper and bitterly says to her mother, Ekweme, what type of Ekweme is this? Please let me alone, mother, and she bursts into tears. Her mother consoles her to no avail. She decides to take her children and go back home, since she didn't want anyone to remind her of her loneliness, not even her own mother. Chapter 9. The rain season is about to come. IHUOMA is worried about her thatches conditions. Nadia and Menik's brother discussed with his wife to help IHUOMA fix her thatch the next day. The following day, Nadi, Ekweme, and Wakiri come to help with the thatching. Ekweme's eye was watching Homa keenly. We are also informed of Ekweme's mother Adaku, who bore Ekweme, the firstborn, and Kechi, the second-born, followed after 10 years. Then after her, there were no children for 15 years or so. But later she became pregnant, and everyone, including Adaku herself, thought she was diseased. It was Sindaru, the expert on childbirth, who pronounced her pregnant, and finally she gave birth to a strong baby son. The men keep on working, then they paused to have a meal, then they finished the thatching, and IHUOMA was thankful. After leaving, Ekweme comes back, pretending to have forgotten his machete, but after picking it, he starts to seduce IHUOMA, who seems uninterested. Ekweme decides to leave, and when he reaches home, he is given the soup that was too salty and decides to go to sleep on empty stomach. He dreamed about a Menik who finds him in his house and asks him to go with him to the farm. They cross the stream and the villagers appear at the scene. One villager takes him and tries to grab him. He screams and wakes up. He tells the dream to his mother. They take him to Anyika, who gives him protective charms. After that, he goes to the forest to see his traps. Chapter 10. Madume is confused in his mind following Emenik's death. At some point, he thinks he is responsible for it, but at times he thought that the gods supported it. He started plucking fruits and tapping palm wine from Emenik's land, hoping that no one was to ask him. He also believed he now had a second chance of getting IHUOMA. He asks his wife Woru to start being nice to IHUOMA so that he may finally marry her. His wife refused to carry the errand. The children come and Madume refers to them as Woru's children and not his. Woru cries bitterly because she believes he says so because they are girls, not boys, and secondly, she believes that he wants to marry IHUOMA to bear him a baby boy. Madume later left and met IHUOMA and pretended to help her, but she refused. He goes home with her, but unfortunately he hurts his toe against the corner of a hall. He goes to sit in the reception hall, but she ignores him. Passing by the road, Woru sees him at IHUOMA's compound. He later left her and went back to his house, where he quarrels with his wife. Anyika, the Dibia witch doctor, tells him that he was lucky to have come alive out of Emenik's compound because some unknown spirits, some from the sea, plus Emenik's father, teamed to kill him. To protect him from the spirits' hunt, he tells him to make several sacrifices, which would involve 7 grains of alligator pepper, 7 manila, an old basket, 3 calories, a bunch of unripe palm fruit, 2 cobs of maize, a small bunch of plantains, some dried fish, 2 cocks of which must be white, 7 eggs, some camwood, chalk, turtles or the shell, and a chameleon. Although it is a costly sacrifice, Madume had no option but to go and prepare the items, since nothing is more precious than life. Anyika tells him how the procedure will take place, that he will carry the sacrifice to the road junction at night and say these words: Amadioha Ojuku Miniweku, ancestors, gods of the night, no one digs up immature yams, my hair is not grey, my work undone except my sacrifice, and spare me. This is on page 59. He goes home feeling reassured. He tells his wife and chauffeurs to help in collecting some items. Chapter 11. Nenda, IHUOMA's neighbor, goes to visit Adaku to see her wonder baby. She reports that she had not called for a long time because both her children and husband, Ouhoji, have been sick, a reasonable excuse. After a brief chat, Nenda rises to go and Ekweme comes home. He escorts Nenda to the main road and asks her to carry his message to IHUOMA. He asks her to tell IHUOMA that he wants them to be friends, real friends. The next morning, Nenda went to IHUOMA and to walk together to the farms. Nenda gives the message to IHUOMA, but she seems uninterested. They part and each one goes to her farm. In the evening, she wanted to go back to IHUOMA to ask for the answer, but her husband did not go to bed. The next day, Ekweme was waiting for the answer from Nenda under the tree. His father comes to interrupt him. He decides to go back to his room and watches his father from inside. His father gets a visitor and they start chatting for a long time. He wishes that Nenda would be late. Finally, Ekweme comes out and the visitor leaves. His father senses something, but Ekweme lies that he is waiting for Wodu Wakiri. He sees Nenda coming from the well and rushes to inquire what IHUOMA said, but he is disappointed to hear that she said nothing. Chapter 12. Madume is through with the sacrifice and he feels that no spirit will harm him only because he had made the required sacrifice. He goes to sleep thinking of IHUOMA. He decides that he must give her up to spare his life, but he affirms that he won't give up the land in dispute, but will crave its ownership once and for all. In the morning, after nursing his wound, he takes his machete and goes to the land in dispute. He finds IHUOMA harvesting a plantain. He tells her to stop claiming the land to be his. IHUOMA wonders because as she thought the land problem had been settled by the elders, but since only a very foolish woman would try to struggle with a man, she obeys. As she leaves, Madume grips her arm so that they may compromise the matter. She struggles to free herself until she starts weeping loudly going back home. On hearing this, Nadi races towards the spot, followed by other men, Ekweme among them. Nadi quarrels with Madume, but the neighbors go to separate them. Madume cuts one plantain. A cobbler spits in his eyes. He calls for help and they send Adana to fetch Anyika the Dibia. Anyika refused to go because that was the act of a god and he too had to ensure his safety as well. Later he says to Woru that a sacrifice involving 2 lambs must be made unless otherwise he could do nothing to help. She tells her husband the bitter news. He asks her to squeeze some milk from her breast into his eyes. After 3 days, the eyes were more swollen than ever. After collecting all the items for the sacrifice, it was performed, but nothing changed, and finally Madume was totally blind. Woru had to shoulder greater responsibilities by herself. Madume was still hot-tempered and treats his family roughly. She goes to ask Chima, the village chief, to come and talk to him. Chima comes with 2 other elders to settle the matter, but Madume responds to them rudely and they decide to leave. They chat and say that he has no right to bark at them since the fault is his. The plantain was not his. Woru decides to escape from home with the children, suspecting that Madume wants to kill her. Madume notices it and asks her to stay, but she insists to tell her parents first and come back the following day. At Diere, the Oduma Bita meets with Ekweme and they discuss the dance. They had composed a song about Madume and the spitting cobra, but since he was now blind, they dropped the song. sound of cries is heard, and later they identify that it comes from Madume's compound. They notice that Madume has committed suicide and no ordinary man was supposed to bring him down except the Dibia. When Anyika came, he cut down the body and they took it to Minita Forest, the place where rejected bodies were to be thrown. Chapter 13. On Eke Day, IHUOMA, sitting at her reception hall crackling palm nuts, sees Woru passing by, moody clad in black lapa. She thinks of Madume's death and sees that it was so bad for Omokachi village to lose 2 young men in 2 years. Nenda comes to visit her and they had a long chat with IHUOMA is hammering the palm nuts. She says that by now she has no one to admire her, but Nenda used that opportunity to tell her what Ekweme told her. Suddenly, Ekweme and Wakiri arrive at the reception hall. They pretend that Nadi has sent them to help him tie IHUOMA's dry yam. Nenda and Wakiri leave and Ekweme is left with IHUOMA. IHUOMA discovers that their departure is a calculated move and feels embarrassed. Ekweme finds it difficult to express his emotions towards IHUOMA. He ends up telling her that they have composed a new song and sings it. Aleluchi Oji, she's a champion wrestler. A mighty leg twist sent her husband down. Aleluchi Oji, she's a champion wrestler. Ekweme says that they would have released the song already, but Madume's death had prevented them from doing that. But he promised to release it at the next dance. Since Madume's death was abominable, thus there will be no mourning and no second burial. He leaves and reaches home with IHUOMA in his mind. The next day, he prepared himself well and her mother suspected something. He goes to see IHUOMA and they chat a bit. IHUOMA says that women are unlucky because they are denied many things such as climbing trees, eating the meat of kite, the gizzard, firigis of a bird, etc. Ekweme looks at his shadow to tell the time. Then he decides to go home to mend his mother's kitchen, promising to come the next day. He fixes his mother's chicken and goes to rest. Mom comes beating the drum with a new skin. They talk of the next dance and practice the new song they have composed. Neighbors gather to listen and dance. Chapter 14. Wakiri, Nadi, Mbachi, IHUOMA and Ekweme have come to help IHUOMA to tie her yams. By midday, they pause for a meal. After the job, they all move homewards in a narrow path. Ekweme makes sure that he's next to IHUOMA, but she discovers it and moves backwards. Ekweme is happy nevertheless, since at least they had spent a day together. When others take their directions, Ekweme takes a detour and comes back to IHUOMA's house. After the meal, he expresses his love to her and that he wants to pay the bride price for her, but IHUOMA seems uninterested to carry on that talk. Ekweme decides to leave. She calls him back and apologizes if at all she offended him. However, she asks him if he is really fair to him because she says he has a fiancée called Ahurore and asks him to go on and marry her since she is also beautiful. He insists that he is not ready to marry her. Ekweme laments that maybe she refuses because she is too good for him, thus not of her type. IHUOMA feels some pain because of those words, but she advises him that she is too old for him. He needs a maiden who would obey him and give him the first fruits of her womb. She also says that her children will soon be a burden to him. She advises him that so long as he was engaged to Ahurore since childhood, and she is well behaved and beautiful, it is better to marry her instead. Despite all the struggles to convince him to give up the idea, Ekweme stands by his words. They part, and Ekwe reaches home and his mother notices as he opens his door. Adaku, his mother, is worried about his recent closeness to IHUOMA. She introduces the subject to her husband. They discuss that they should begin the formal negotiations with Ahurore's parents before it is too late. Chapter 15. Ahurore and her best friend Titi are on the way to the well to fetch water. They chat on the way, and Titi tells her that she should continue sleeping with her young sister to get used to sharing a bed with someone. She says so because she has heard that Ekwe will soon bring wine to her father to begin the marriage procedures. As they return home, Titi tells Ahurore to inform her when Ekwe comes. Then they part. Ahurore finds her father, Wagbara, and her brothers busy sweeping the compound. She is told to keep indoors on Eke because Ekweme would be coming. She goes to help with her mother, Wonuma, prepare breakfast. Her mother informs her of the impending visitation and tells her to appear at her best, since it was the duty of Wagbara, the second wife, to feed her. Wonuma and her children ate their own food. Ahure quarrels with her sister Ahurore during the meal. He wishes her to be beaten by her future husband. We are told that Ahurore was engaged to Ekweme when she was 8 years old and Ekwe was only about 5 years old. Her parents were proud of such engagement, so they exercised extra care over her. They are all confident that Ekwe will perform all the duties of a husband well. Areruchi, his second wife, comes to welcome him for the meal. Chapter 16. Ekweme is not happy because of the idea of getting married to Ahurore. He refused to go with his father for the initial negotiations and says he had planned to go to his animal trap the next morning. His father is surprised and sends Adaku to go and talk to him to find the root of the matter. He tells his mother to tell his father that he does not want to marry Ahurore. She wonders whether Ahurore has done anything wrong to him, but he says there is nothing wrong. Her mother starts crying since it was terrible to break childhood engagement, so it would bring them a great shame. His mother fears that maybe her son is bewitched or he is interested in another girl, IHUOMA, she guessed. She uses a mother's threatening to compel him to tell the truth. She says, Ekwe, by the breast that fed you and by the laps that carried you, I command you to answer this question truthfully. Have you another girl in mind? Ekwe says he loves IHUOMA, and her mother is surprised because she already has 3 children. She narrates the story to her husband and says that her son is under the influence of a love potion and they have to find an antidote from Anyika to clear up the stupid ideas from his head. Wigwe could not blame his son for falling in love with IHUOMA because she was really beautiful. Also, he thought that IHUOMA was too disciplined to accept Ekwe's offer for marriage. He calls Ekweme and talks to him gently. He tells him that IHUOMA is a married woman with 3 children already and is looking after her husband's compound. He asks Ekwe if IHUOMA has consented that marriage. He lies yet. The father does not believe. He asks IHUOMA to be called and say yes in front of them all. He decides to go and plead with IHUOMA but does not find her at home. He goes to her farm. She's not there as well. Later he meets Nenda, who tells him that she has gone to Omigwe. He runs to Omigwe but finds out that they have gone to the farm far away. He gives up. Chapter 17. IHUOMA returns to Omokachi from Omigwe where she had gone to help her parents with farm work. Nenda informs her that Ekweme had been looking for her while she was away. IHUOMA starts wondering what Ekweme's search for her was all about since she had already declared their marriage impossible. Before she sleeps, Wigwe, Ekweme's father, comes to visit her. He is accompanied by Ekweme. He tells her that he has come to inquire about the relationship with her son. Nadi comes to see who the people who entered her sister-in-law's compound were trying to protect her. Learning that they were just normal visitors, he goes back. Wigwe uses a trick and says he has come to ask IHUOMA to marry his son. IHUOMA discovers that it is a trick because even a fool would not let his son to take a widow as a first wife. Ekweme himself was taken by surprise by that irony. IHUOMA turns down the offer and says that she has to look after her husband's compound and take care of his children. On hearing this, Wigwe bid her good morrow and they left. Ekweme felt humiliated by his father. The next day, Ekwe lies up before everybody and goes to see his traps not to return home till evening. The parents are worried. Finally, he comes with a huge deer slung across his back. They work hard preparing the meat. IHUOMA kept on crying after the departure of Wigwe and his son. The next day, she stayed indoors the whole day. She had a terrible headache and kept wondering how in the world a man like Wigwe could make such a stupid marriage proposal. As she's sleeping, dreaming of the matter, her son Nona wakes her up and gives her the meat from Ekwe. She wonders how he got it, but he says that he was given as a gift after being sent to take the meat to Akiri and Mom. Her mother warns her not to receive gifts from people after running errands for them. She thinks of throwing the meat into the bush, but on second thought, she stores it in the basket in the kitchen. Nona is so disappointed at his mother's reaction towards him. IHUOMA comforts him, calling him fond names like Hash Nyoma, Okpara, Agurito Master, Latkira. Nona is amused by the last name and laughs through his tears. Wigwe felt relief because Ekweme had no reason for insisting to marry IHUOMA as she had rejected him in front of him. The next Eke, Wigwe, Mom, Wakiri and Ekweme are on the way to Omigwe. Ekwe is not happy on the way and Wakiri noticed it. Finally, they arrived at Omigwe and were warmly welcomed by Wagbara's family. Wagbara was not happy with the presence of Wakiri since he liked jokes even in important matters. They were served with pounded yam. Ahurore appeared and Ekweme admired her because she was really pretty. Other men did the same. Ekweme was now in a dilemma as he could not tell who is more beautiful between Ahurore and IHUOMA. After the meal, the negotiations began. Wagbara left that responsibility to his young brother, Nenik. The duty of a guide in a marriage is to introduce the prospective bridegroom to important relations of the bride. He also fought tooth and nail to slash down the bride price. Although related to the bride, he was expected to side with the bridegroom in all things. Regular visits to Ohlor His parents are done as usual. On one visit, Kweme wanted to see Ahurore and talked to her, but she avoided him as expert of the blind. Kitty, her friend, convinced her to go back and talk to him, but she refused. With help from her mother, they forced her back into the room. Ekwe could not understand the attitude of his blind. The next day, a formal presentation of wine arrived. Wigwe, accompanied by several village elders, go to Omigwe. Traditionally, Ahurore was to return the calabashes after this great occasion and stayed in her husband's house for 4 days before returning to her parents. In the evening, they arrived at Omokachi. They danced all the night, and indeed, it was a great day. Ahurore spent 4 days in the Emenik's compound. All her movements were watched. She was petted, praised, overfed, and kind words greeted her all around. She was happy. Many young girls of her age came to chat with her, telling her the advantages of their beloved village. IHUOMA was there as well as trying to argue in favor of Ahurore because she too was from Omigwe. Her presence there made Adaku clear all the ill feelings towards her. The girls left, and only Ahurore and IHUOMA were left. IHUOMA advised her to be a good wife and upheld the good name of their village. Chapter 19. IHUOMA is finally happy that the love that was developing between her and Ekweme and bringing about chaos contrary to the traditions of Omokachi was over. She now had to concentrate on her farm and gave extra care and attention to her children. She also danced on moonlit nights as happily as anybody else and greeted and talked freely to Ekweme when they met. Finally, they went for a night dance in which 2 new songs are released. One about how Wodu Wakiri fell off a palm wine tree under the sting of bees, and another about a man in Chioru who tried to make love to a woman in the farm. Chapter 20. The marriage negotiations had to take 1 year, but Wigwe lashed things and it took only 6 months to complete all the things needed. So Aulore was home in months. Ekweme had reconciled himself to the marriage. He resumes to his normal life and tries to forget about IHUOMA. He was wondering whether he was behaving like a married man since he saw no difference in his life until his wife was installed in his own health. Then did he feel truly married. Ekweme kept on eating the overnight fufu from his mother's house. It was okay with Ahurore because Ekwe had been the only child of Adaku for a long time, not expecting another child, so his mother guarded him jealously and protected him from any harm. Wigwe accused his wife for trying to make a woman out of a man. She too accused him for setting too high standards for a very young child. A further flashback of Ekweme's background was given, explaining how he began his hunting and trapping career. Since her mother was giving him praises, he preferred his mother's company to his father's. As he was growing up, he was not bored with girls as his age mates. He only loved his mother and IHUOMA. He hoped his wife will make him a good wife as well. He sat in his new kitchen with his wife chatting while roasting the hog's meat. The meat fat dropping into the fire produced smoke that disturbed them. Finally, Ahurore asked Ekwe what he would like to eat for supper, and he told her, use her discretion. She started crying. Chapter 21. Ekweme was tired of Ahurore's behavior of crying every now and then and saw that she was fit for an old man who would pet her, not a young man. They took her to Anyika to control her Ogu personal god, but it did not help. Andaku advised her son not to quarrel with his wife and advised her daughter-in-law to persevere their marriage days. Ugo on his side saw no need to talk to his son because he knew that it was just normal and it would come a day when they would adjust. As days went on, he saw no change. His determination turned to indifference. He had to find a chance to talk to him. I advised him not to quarrel with his wife quite often as they were still young couples. He hoped that all would come to an end as it was to them when they were to their first years of marriage. Ekwe protests and says there are other young married women of her age, but they didn't cry as much as she did. Ekwe went to bed but did not sleep, as his father's words rewound in his mind. He saw himself unlucky because other men were beating their wives and exchanging bitter words, but he hadn't. Meat was in constant supply and she lacked no wrapper. He blamed the childhood engagements. He tried to focus his attention toward the young married girls, but none of them appealed to him. He felt lonely because, though surrounded by parents, relatives, and friends, no one could help him. He decided to form in his mind the image of a woman he wanted, a woman with overwhelming tenderness and understanding in her eyes, a smile in her lips, the gap in the teeth, the well-formed limbs, and rounded buttocks. He clutched the hair and gasped IHUOMA and slept. The next day, he goes to the bush and returned in the evening and asked for a warm bath. His wife said it was not ready. He went to his mother's kitchen. That thing angered her, and she decided not to prepare it at all. They quarreled again over the matter, and he ate a little food and went to bed claiming he was not hungry. Ahurore found him in the bed eating groundnuts and dried corn. She confirmed that he did not like her cooking. She started crying and Ekwe slapped her on the face, pushed her back violently, and she fell on her back. There was a serious fight between the two and the parents came to intervene. The next day, he came from the bush and found that Aurora had run away to her parents. He went to take her back, but according to the custom, he was not allowed until the third day. Parents met to settle the dispute and found out that the two had no particular reason for quarreling. He came back with his wife confident that he could now cope with the situation. Chapter 22. It is in the evening of a market day, but some people have not been able to sell their yams. The ricos, the principal customers, moved around waiting for the time when yam sellers would beg them to buy at a give-away price. Lastly, the disappointed groups of people went home chatting about the ever-falling price for their farm produce. Ekweme was among them. He was thoughtful on the way until IHUOMA joined him and the two started chatting on the way about the sales of yams and cocoyam While laughing, Ekweme felt relief for a moment. Their talk changed to Ahurore, and Ekweme asked IHUOMA to come and advise her. After a thoughtful moment, IHUOMA encouraged him that she would learn in time. Ekwe said she was a terrible woman and had made his life miserable. IHUOMA tried to avoid the talk about this girl, and the two walked in silence. IHUOMA was working in her home farm. Ekweme passed by, pretending to be on his way to inspect his traps, and greeted her just as did other passers-by. He left the path and went where IHUOMA was. He kept on chatting with IHUOMA until she asked him to leave. The next day, IHUOMA continued to harvest her cocoyam. Again, Ekweme went to see her. IHUOMA was worried to see that Ekweme had not forgotten about her. IHUOMA asked him to leave because by staying there, he was creating a bad impression to the passers-by that would soon invite the worst scandal imaginable. When he left, she thought of reporting the matter to his father to save herself from future complications. She sent Nenda to go and tell Ekwe to stay away from her since she didn't want any problem with her fellow village girl, Ahurore. Chapter 23. Ahurore God given to her as present by her mother was missing. She reported to Ekwe, but he treated the matter lightly. Fearing a quarrel, he set out to look for it. He looked for it into several compounds and reached IHUOMA's. He didn't find the goat, and as he turned to leave, he met his wife there. The wife started questioning him what he was doing in IHUOMA's house. She said that she had been hearing the rumors, but now she had confirmed it. He went home and his wife came back, muttering and nagging. He decided to go to Wakiri's house, and the two started playing their instrument and while singing until Ekweme shed tears. The next day, Ahurore went to see her parents and poured her troubles to her mother and accused IHUOMA to be part of it. Her mother advised her to use charms, love potion to win her husband's heart. When she returned to Omokachi, she went to see Anyika. When her husband went to see his traps, she was frightened because Anyika's house had strange items. Anyika asked for 2 manila first, and Ahurore produced them. Then he started working. He discovered from his cowries that she had come to ask him to administer a love potion. He refused that. He didn't do such things. He said in the long run it made men who were active and intelligent to become passive, stupid, and independent. Ahurore left Anyika's house disappointed but impressed. Her mother came and was told of the response. She decided to go to another medicine man at Chioru. Chapter 24. After doing his incantations, the medicine man at Chioru assured Wonuma that the man was fixed. He gave her another stuff to be mixed to his food. As she started back home, she was afraid to cross Miniweku stream, since no one carrying any form of poison could cross it unharmed. Later, a conviction grew in her that hers was not poison but medicine to build a home. She closed and went to give the medicine to her daughter. Ahurore pretended to complain of a serious stomach trouble so that she may use that opportunity to prepare 2 different pots of soup and put the drug into her husband's soup. The trick worked as expected. After 2 days, Ekweme's condition was Was and Anyika tried to treat him, and for a time it worked. Later, he attributed his sickness to the protective charms around Mom's farm that he trespassed. He did all that was required to heal him, to no avail. His health was getting worse and worse. As Ekwe complained to his mother, Ahuro listened without comment. She knew what it was all about. Ekweme was putting on weight, and Adaku thought it was good cooking of Ahurore, but as the days passed, he was behaving awkwardly. One day, his mother talked to him. He seemed to respond awkwardly, saying that he was just fine. Adaku kicked Ahurore and blamed her for being the cause of her son's illness. They discussed it with Wigwe and decided to see Anyika for it. The next day, Wigwe interviewed Ekwe, but he kept laughing at him, and Wigwe was worried. He went to see Anyika, but he missed him and came back to keep watch on his son. He told his wife that for sure their son was terribly bewitched. As Adaku goes to see him, he left the room and started running. Chapter 25. Wigwe and his wife tried to chase and held the Ekweme, but they failed. He went to ask for assistance from Mom, Wakiri, and Nadi. Ahurore was still working in the farm till late in the evening. She started walking home, but met no one on the way to give her a company. As she passed through the forest, past the shrines of Ari, Diaf God, and Amadioha, a man emerged lumbering along, and she discovered he was her husband. Ahurore was worried as her husband saw her and increased speed. He later changed the direction and moved toward his wife with a stick. Ahurore slipped into the bush. She stayed in the bush, hiding and watching her husband from a distance. She decided to run away, but Ekweme noticed her and started chasing her. Fortunately, she met Mom and other men who helped to overpower him. They dragged him home as gently as possible. As they approached the village, Wigwe told them to stop and wait for the darkness so that people may not see his son in that condition. Finally, they took him home and went to fetch Anyika. Meanwhile, Ekweme escaped again. Ikoro, the talking drum, was beaten, and all the young men of the village began the searching mission. Anyika returned home, thinking of Ahurore as a possible cause because she went to him for a love potion. He found Wigwe and Adaku waiting for him, manilas in hand. Anyika told them the whole story and how Ahurore was involved. Some elderly men and women gathered to give sympathy to Wigwe, and they were telling tales of lost men there surviving in the forest to encourage Wigwe that his son would be found. Chapter 26. In the morning, the young men had not managed to find Ekweme. After bath and breakfast, the drum was beaten again. Nokekoro advised one group to go to his traps, led by Nadi, and others go anywhere else. Nadi suggested that they should take the dogs to help in the searching mission. Then they all disappeared into the bushes. They went through all his traps, but no trace of him was found, but only some animals caught in the traps. As they returned home and deposited the animal from Ekweme's traps at Wigwe's compound, they decided to look at a trap trail behind Wigwe's compound before coming to rest. The dog advanced forward and started barking seriously. They got there but saw nothing. Wakiri discovered that the dog was barking up a tree. He looked up and saw Ekweme resting on a comfortable branch of a tree. He informed others of his discovery. After a discussion, they decided not to raise any alarm, but they went to inform the village, leaving 3 people behind. They informed Nokekoro Nokekoro fast before Wigwe and the drum was beaten. People from the bush and all other villagers gathered at the arena. Nokekoro announced that Ekweme had been found, but they won't be able to see him until 2 days. He thanked the young men for their devotion. They left. When they reached the tree, Adaku started begging Yuko to come down, but he didn't move. They asked the mom to go up the tree and persuaded him to come down. As he saw mom, he drew the unseen club, and mom had to climb down immediately. People pleaded, threatened, abused him, but nothing was achieved. Nokoro decided to threaten with his powers. Ekweme mumbled something they did not understand. They sent mom to climb up and listen to him. He heard him saying that he wanted IHUOMA. Quickly, IHUOMA was sent for. When she came and Ekwe saw her, he started climbing down. Chapter 27. Ekweme ate the food set before him very well, but he refused to bath. His mother was worried, but Wigwe decided to go and call Anyika. When he came, Ekweme refused to talk to him, calling him a wicked man and crazy. He called his father by his name, Wigwe, something he had never done, and told him that he wanted to marry Homer right away. He was given the medicine, but he refused to take it. He insisted that all he wanted was to marry Ihoma unless otherwise he would not listen to anybody. They later discussed that they should fetch Ihoma and arrange a make-believe marriage so that he could accept the medicine. The medicine man told them to persuade Ihoma, and if they succeeded, they should inform him the next day morning. That evening, Wigwe and Adaku went to persuade Ihoma to come to Wigwe's compound and arrange a make-believe marriage so that Ekwe may take the medicine. Ihoma was very supportive. She agreed, but said she would have to inform Nadi, her brother-in-law, to know her movements. Nadi agreed to the proposal, and Ihoma showed up to Wigwe's compound. As soon as Ekwe saw her, his eyes lit up. He invited Ihoma to sit next to him and accused the crazy fellows who had been bothering him. He asked Ihoma if she would be ready to marry him, and she agreed on a condition that he would have to take whatever medicine Anyika gives him. Surprisingly, he agreed, and Anyika seized that opportunity. He gave the medicine to the sick man. He drank and returned the cup to him. Ihoma asked Ekwe to bath, and he agreed. They also asked her to convince him to sleep. He refused and said that he wanted to chat with her. He asked her to marry him, and she assured him that they would get married as soon as he finished all the medicine Anyika was going to give him, which he agreed. Later, she asked him to sleep because she wanted to go and feed her children, promising to come the next day. The parents thanked her very much, and they discussed how to reward her. They thought of giving her part of the meat Nadi brought from Ekwe's traps. The next morning, Anyika came to administer his antidote. Ekwe drank the medicine without any problem. Ekwe seemed to be perfectly normal again, and he was talking sensible things. When Ihoma arrived, he apologized for all the troubles he had caused to her. As the two chatted alone, Ihoma discovered that Ekwe was now sensible, considerate, and gentle. He insisted to see her in the morning of the following day, assuring her that he loved her even more than before. They parted, promising to see each other the next day. Chapter 28. Ekweme improved rapidly and began doing odd jobs at home. He didn't want to go outside his father's compound because of shame of his recent behavior. Everybody agreed it was a love potion that caused it. Ihoma's regular visit to him made their bond to grow stronger. Even Ada began to love her and apologized for the wrong opinions she once held of her. IHUOMA also paid regular visits to IHUOMA and brought her meat from his traps. The gossips circulated around, but IHUOMA didn't care. This encouraged IHUOMA until he came near to worshipping her. One day he asked her again to marry him and asked IHUOMA for her consent before he told it to Nadi. The next day he told Nadi and he had no objections. Wagbara was told to refund Ahurori's bride price and he did it promptly. He told Wige that while the whole business is a shame to him, but they should remain friends. Okachi, IHUOMA's mother, was very happy about it. Anyika was the one person who did not approve of the marriage. He told Wige to try a divination feast before the marriage took place, and he promised to pay for them the divination fee. Because they had paid so much already, they had to check on the malevolent spirits and render them powerless in advance. After performing his rituals, Anyika said the marriage would not work out well because the strong spirits were against the marriage. Wige wanted to know why, and here the story went. IHUOMA belongs to the sea. When she was in the spirit world, she was the wife of a sea king. The luring spirit of the sea, against the advice of her husband, she sought the company of human beings and was incarnated. The sea king was very angry, but because he loved her best of all his wives, he did not destroy her immediately she was born. However, because of his great love for her, he is terribly jealous and tries to destroy any man who makes love to her. It's on page 195. He told them that a Menik's lock chest that killed him was the design of the Sea King. Madume's blindness was the result of the Sea King, who assumed the form of a serpent and dealt with him. He told them to consider IHUOMA's life and ask themselves if they have ever seen anyone quite so right in everything, almost perfect. So she was a sea goddess. The only way men could live with her is, well, she could be someone's concubine. Her seeking husband can be persuaded to put up with that after highly involved rites, but as a wife, he's completely ruled out. Anyika suggested that women of her likeness, were very few in the world. They were usually very beautiful, but their husbands' spirits watched them from the spirit world. Marriage could only be possible if an expert on sorcery was consulted, but with the Sea King it was impossible because he was too powerful. As they returned home, they narrated the bitter truth to IHUOMA, but he ignored it and said he was ready to be her husband even for a day before his death, as his spirit would go singing happily to the spirit world. He told IHUOMA that they would start the negotiations in 4 days' time. Chapter 29. Wige and his wife were wondering what to do. While they appreciated the contribution of IHUOMA to the recovery of their son, but Anyika's discovery took their joy away. They thought maybe Anyika didn't see well into the future because they paid him with the money he gave them. Adaku proposed to find another medicine man at Ariji village. Early the next morning, IHUOMA and his father left for Ariji and met Agoturumbe the Dibia. He too gave a divination that was not much different from Anyika's, but the most important difference was that he said he could bind the Sea King and prevent him from doing any harm. He asked him to collect the following for the sacrifice: a piece of white cloth, a white hen, a bright laid cock, 7 live plantains, and a brightly colored male lizard. He told them that it would take place in a canoe on a river or creek by midnight. They left triumphantly. The marriage proceedings were put off for a while, waiting for the sacrifice to be done. Meanwhile, only wine was drunk and gifts exchanged. They also decided to have a dance, and Ekwe sang with a new meaning in his voice. After the dance, Ekwe escorted IHUOMA to her house and told her why they had gone to Ariji. He told her the whole story, omitting the part of the deaths of Madume and her husband. IHUOMA listened and said it was funny because she didn't feel like the daughter of the sea. Ekweme wanted to make love with her, but she advised him to wait until they got married. Dekwe left. In the morning, before going to inspect his traps, he went to visit Homa, who informed him that she was thinking of him all night long. He told her that he went to see her because her name meant beautiful face or good luck. She also told him that his name meant say and do. When Ekwe came back, he had caught 2 animals and proved that IHUOMA's face was really lucky. He suggested to give part of the meat to his in-laws, part to Nadi, and gave part to IHUOMA. IHUOMA promised to help to collect some items for the sacrifice, and Nona would help to catch it. Chapter 30. Agoturumbe the Dibia arrived with a great flourish. Many people wondered why Anyika was not present, and others said maybe his charges were too high or he couldn't cope with the situation. Igwe had already prepared the room, and according to the instructions of the Dibia, no man was to enter that room 7 days before his occupation. Many clients came to Igwe's company for divination. That evening, he collected a tidy heap of maniras. Because of running out of stock in the morning, he had to go and collect more herbs and roots. On his way, he met Anyika. They exchanged greetings as normal friends, and Anyika directed him where to get rats' ears. Agoturumbe returned and attended his customers, where he told Wigwe to arrange for the boat and gave him a summary of the whole procedure to be carried out at midnight on the middle of the river. Ekweme was worried that if the sacrifice was to take place on the river, that would be the best opportunity for the Sea King to destroy him. He wanted an alternative sacrifice, but Agoturumbe insisted that there was no other option to bind the Sea King. He assured Ekwe that with his presence nothing would go wrong because he had dealt with more dangerous cases than that one successfully. With that assurance, he went to the riverside to arrange for the boat. He went and made the bargaining with the boatmen, most of whom refused until he got one who agreed and charged him 15 maniras. Ekwe gave him instructions to hold the boat firmly when the Sea King appeared, but the boatman laughed and told Ekwe that he had been going on such missions, but he had never seen the Sea King himself. He thought that the medicine men were just deceiving them. He came back and gave the summary to IHUOMA. He remembered that he hadn't prepared the lizard yet. They sent Nona along with his playmates to go and hunt for the lizard while they had a romantic chat in the house. Later, he went out to see Turumbe getting on with the preparations. The arrow, flying parallel with the wall, just missed the big lead lizard and hit the upper part of Ekweme's belly, and he fell back across the doorway with a cry. IHUOMA, Nona with his playmates, Agoturumbe and Wigwe rushed to the scene. They carried Ekweme to his room. IHUOMA was crying violently, rolling from one corner of the compound to the other. She slapped her thighs, beat her chest, raised her hands, and hoped wildly until they restrained her. Adaku was under similar restraint in her room. The spirit of death was known to take away people's souls shortly after midnight. That was when Ekwe died. Thank you so much. It was not that easy to follow. Chapter 1, 2, 3 up to chapter 30. But the story was interesting. If you liked the story, you can also look for the book and read it. It is an interesting story. Thank you so much. Thank you. If you did not subscribe, you should remember to subscribe for more stories. Thank you.